I found out about the trip by accident. Not because anyone told me. Not because someone confessed. A cousin posted a picture online. One of those casual vacation photos people upload without thinking too much about who might see it. 3 beach chairs. A bright blue ocean. My sister laughing in oversized sunglasses. And next to her, leaning back with the same crooked smile I used to wake up next to every morning, was my fiancé. At first I thought I misunderstood something. Maybe it was an old photo. Maybe the angle was misleading. But the caption was simple. Family trip before the wedding. Before the wedding. I stared at the screen for a long time. Long enough that my phone dimmed and locked itself. The strange thing is that the first feeling wasn't anger. It was confusion. My fiancé had told me he needed a few days away for work meetings. My sister had mentioned something about visiting friends out of town. A few other relatives had suddenly been busy. That same week. At the time it all sounded normal. Seeing them together like that rearranged the entire picture. I didn't call anyone. Instead, I scrolled. More photos appeared. A dinner table full of familiar faces. My uncle raising a glass. My sister leaning against my fiancé's shoulder in a way that didn't feel accidental. The kind of closeness people forget to hide. When they assume you're not watching. I closed of the evening. The house felt unusually quiet. Not lonely. Just quiet in a way that made small sounds, like the refrigerator motor turning on, feel louder than usual. The house had always been ours. At least in theory, but legally it was mine. I had bought it 3 years earlier before the engagement. When I still believed stability meant putting down roots. He had moved in later. That detail hadn't seemed important before. Now it was the only thing that mattered. I didn't confront anyone that night. Or the next day. Instead I started doing something strangely practical. I checked my bank accounts. I reviewed property documents. I opened the email thread from the real estate agent who had helped me buy the house years earlier. Her contact information was still there. When I called, she sounded surprised but professional. Yes, the market is strong right now, she said. If you're serious about selling, we could move quickly. I am, I replied. I didn't explain why. Over the next week, everything happened with a quiet efficiency that almost felt surreal. Photographs were posted. An offer arrived faster than I expected. I accepted it without hesitation. While the paperwork moved forward, I began packing. At first it felt mechanical. Clothes into boxes. Books stacked neatly. Personal items wrapped carefully in newspaper. But certain things slowed me down. The coffee mug my fiancé had given me the first Christmas we lived together. A photo from a family barbecue where my sister's arm was slung casually around both of us. Small moments from a version of reality that suddenly felt unreliable. I packed them anyway. Not because they still meant something, but because pretending they never existed would have been dishonest. The movers came 3 days before the closing date. By then the house looked hollow. Furniture gone. Walls bare except for faint outlines where frames had hung for years. When the last box left, I walked through each room once more. There was no dramatic feeling. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the life I had imagined had already ended long before the furniture disappeared. The closing happened the following afternoon, money transferred, documents signed, keys handed over. A week later, I boarded a flight with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket. The new job overseas had been an idea sitting quietly in the background for months. Something I kept postponing because planning a wedding made long-term moves complicated. Now it felt strangely simple. Distance wasn't revenge. It was clarity. 3 days after I arrived in my new apartment abroad, my phone started lighting up, missed calls, messages, voicemails. Apparently they had returned from their family trip. The first message came from my sister. Where are you? Why is the house empty? The second came from my fiancé. There's a real estate agent here. What's going on? I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I walked out onto the small balcony overlooking a narrow street lined with old buildings. People moved below speaking a language I barely understood. It felt unfamiliar, but also calm. Finally, I opened my phone and typed a single reply. The house was mine. I sold it. 3 dots appeared almost instantly as he started typing. Then they disappeared. Another message arrived a few minutes later. You're overreacting. We can explain. I read the sentence twice. For years, I had believed explanations were the most important part of conflict. Now I realized something simpler. Some situations explain themselves. I typed one last message. You don't need to. After that, I turned off the phone. Down on the street, someone laughed as they passed a cafe. A bicycle rolled past on the uneven pavement. Life continued with the quiet indifference of a city that didn't know anything about my past. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders relaxed. Trust, I knew, would take time to rebuild. But distance had already done something important. It had given me space to start again.